Before we get started, if you're watching this video, spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. I forgot to put the spoiler tag in the video, so don't watch this if you haven't seen Outside the Wire. One of the things that doesn't make any sense to me is they really got upset with this guy for stopping them from Saving Private Ryaning themselves unnecessarily. And so there's a lot going on in this film. On Reels. Today we're going to be talking about Outside the Wire, the new Netflix film featuring Anthony Mackie, who you may know from Captain America Civil War or possibly She Hate Me or a very interesting episode of Black Mirror. It also features Damson Idris, who you will know from Snowfall, where he does a fantastic job. He does a good job in this film too. Also, this is directed by Michael Hafstrom, who's done some films that I have not seen, like 1408 and Right. I can't comment on those films, but let me know in the comments if you think that those were great films and if this aligns with his trajectory as a director. The ratings on those are not super high. The premise of this film is that Idris plays a drone pilot who's teamed up with an android, which is Anthony Mackie, and they have to infiltrate this war-torn Civil War area to try to stop this generic bad guy played by Euron Greyjoy from getting these nuclear weapons. It's a very generic plot, nothing super nuanced about it to me, but I'll talk about that a little bit later on. In this future, they have these mechs that are artificially, they have a degree of artificial intelligence. They don't have complete autonomy. Now, Anthony Mackie's character has a higher level of that in the film. But one thing I noticed immediately is that there's a missing link between Anthony Mackie's capability and the actual mechs that are on the ground. The mechs, which they call Gumps, are really not that smart. And they don't really have a high degree of capable functionality. They can't even synchronize attacks. There's a scene where they're supposed to take somebody out and one of them jumps the gun and shoots, and then the other ones don't synchronize kills, which I thought was interesting because in today's time, if I'm playing Ghost Recon right now, I can get on my Xbox, not even the newest one, and play a game where I can synchronize and have the AI attack a target at the same time as me. So I don't understand why they didn't add that to this film. But getting back to the plot, basically they go into this war-torn country. Initially, it starts off with just a drone pilot. Now, Idris is playing this drone pilot. What you need to know about him is that he loves gummy bears and he has a girlfriend back home. They have a scenario that takes place on a bridge where he has to make a decision about whether or not he should kill these people who are attacking them. Now, if he does this, he's in a catch-22 kind of situation. His command is telling him that they don't see the clear and present threat. He says he sees the threat. If he shoots the actual rocket from the drone, he'll definitely kill 2 of his people who are in the line of fire, but he will stop the other 40 people or 38 people from dying. On the other hand, if he doesn't do this, then they might all die. The challenge I have with scenes like this is that while it does build up tension, one of the things that they do is that they create a fake tension where the bad guys do this thing where they wait for you to finish. It's kind of like the villain monologue in a sense. The truck pulls up and is just sitting there for a long time before he has to actually make this decision. He disobeys the command and has to deal with the guilt of killing 2 of his soldiers. As part of the punishment, he gets sent down to work in the very same unit of the people that he killed, and that's where he meets Anthony Mackie's character. Now, Anthony Mackie quickly shows him he's an android, and he says, "Do you trust me?" The guy signs an NDA. They move forward. The kind of android that Anthony Mackie is, he has a great personality to the degree where he's very human and realistic as an android. The guy goes and moves forward with Anthony Mackie, and throughout the course of time, he has a feeling that Anthony Mackie is not being honest with him. Now, they're going to go stop this warlord who's trying to get these nuclear weapons. It's immaterial to me to the degree that this plot takes place because you never at any point in time feel like their lives are really in danger. You never believe. They have a fake scene later in the film. It's like somebody's supposed to have died. You don't believe the person's dead. It's just a struggle in terms of them actually conveying the gravity of the impact of the situation. It's a play-by-numbers action sci-fi movie that has nothing distinct or nuanced about it. When you look at Anthony Mackie, one of my issues with him is that at this point, I really don't know when I watch a film whether the film's going to be good or not when he's in it. It's like Samuel L. Jackson syndrome. He's the poor man Samuel L. Jackson in the sense that he's in everything, but his involvement has almost no bearing on whether or not this film is going to be good or not. You might get Snakes on a Plane. You might get Deep Blue Sea, which I actually like both of those films. But you also might get Star Wars or something like that, something much grander in terms of, or Pulp Fiction. But Anthony Mackie's just taken on so many of these roles that I kind of just don't feel any kind of way about him. As Tamika would say, it's the equivalent of those wet paper bag Australians that they just switch out of roles that are kind of like the Jai Courtneys that you don't really know as much about them in the film. Not going to retain any connection with them. And on top of that, they're just not super interesting to me. When I watched this film, there were also a lot of plot contrivances that kind of messed up my willing suspension of disbelief within the film. There were moments where they did things that made absolutely no sense. There's a part where they open up and they get into a conflict where they're approaching this convoy and they're in a war zone where they see that one group of possible enemies is directly in front of them, and then they could be being assailed from either side by these other enemies. And rather than hide behind the actual mechs and follow the rules of engagement that you might have in the situation, they all get out of their vehicles and do an open standoff, which of course does not end the way that they want it to end. And so I talked to one of my friends who's a Marine. I talked to one of my fraternity brothers that's in the military as well. And they were like, this is why I cannot watch military movies, because a consultant could tell you how to easily fix this problem, but for some reason you skipped over it. I guess because you felt like it added to the story, but it really is an unnecessary situation. As things move forward, you start to realize that the actual android has another agenda that's going on. Anthony Mackie takes him on a trip to different places. He's not completely clear about what their objectives are, but you can tell that to some degree he's been given a degree of autonomy because of the fact that Harp is there with him, the drone pilot. The drone pilot is basically his conscience. And so he says, I can't really do anything, or I can do whatever I want to, but you're the person that I'm looking to tell me if I'm doing the right thing or not. And then they say something that really doesn't make sense. Anthony Mackie comes towards him and says, do you know why I look like this? Anthony Mackie is a black man, right? He says, because my face conveys neutrality. People are not threatened by me, which kind of flies in the face of any studies that you look at with discriminatory practices and how we're kind of hardwired and socialized to discriminate against people, and we have to take active action to not do that. And so Anthony Mackie being a black man is not going to be a non-threatening character, and that's where that plot point falls apart altogether. I get what they're trying to do. I'm glad we have two black male leads, but at the same time, I find it completely unbelievable that you would make him look this way. If you wanted to make him look approachable, you might make him a woman. You might make him seem non-assuming because of the fact that we have so many sexist stereotypes about women. And you could have made him like heavier set, because he still would have the same degree of mobility as he currently has, even with his heavy setness, because he's an android. The CGI in this also, when he reveals that he's an android, it's like it's nothing you haven't seen before. The mechs and the special effects, nothing you haven't seen before. The set design, nothing you haven't seen before. So it's kind of underwhelming, especially considering the fact that early on, when you watch the trailer for this, they try to compare this film to Extraction. And if you watch Extraction, there's fantastic action with one of the Hemsworth boys. I can't remember which Hemsworth it is, or should I say men. And they show that like this is the same people that brought you this. But when they do Anthony Mackie's action sequences, they're very quick cuts. It's clear that he does not have the fighting abilities that other people have who are in this industry, but they focus on it like that's the kind of film that we're watching. Now, I'm okay with a complete action romp where you don't make me think about too much stuff. If you want a film for that, go watch Extraction. I think that's a great film for I just want to sit back, go brain neutral, and enjoy the fighting. It's fantastic. Kind of violent, but it's fantastic. This film is trying to challenge my thinking, but the premise of the film and what they're trying to teach me don't make sense. So moving it further, the main character, the drone pilot, he goes with him to try to pursue this guy who's the villain, generic villain, Euron Greyjoy. And as he's pursuing him, they're trying to do these heavy-handed lessons about how he was so impersonal and how he really didn't consider the impact of all the drone strikes that he did. Mind you, his drone strikes were still within military protocols, so he didn't have a super high casualty count before this. And then it's later revealed directly to him by the android that there was a launcher in that van that was on that bridge, and it would have killed all those people, so he made the right decision. At the end of the film, they have him faced with a dilemma. I'm not going to tell you too much about what Anthony Mackie's character does, but I will say that he basically says you have a choice to make with respect to human beings. The AI, again, you know how this always goes with AIs. You give them autonomy. They're supposed to do this prime directive to protect humans. You realize that the real threat is humans. So the AI does a decision that will cause the loss of life. And he thinks that the main character can relate to him because he made a decision that's going to cause a loss of life. But the problem is that the scale on which that decision was made and the parameters of that decision are not the same. When he was on the bridge, it was a clear and present danger, a very limited time to make the decision, and the outcome will be very clear of what he would do. Anthony Mackie's calculations are completely off. What they're planning to do could destroy the entire Earth. And that character, as he was right in the first place in what he did, he was not without guilt when he killed those people. He felt bad about it. So I don't understand what the message of this film is supposed to be. If you're saying that this guy needs to consider that he's using these drones to kill people, I might argue that that would do more harm than good for somebody who's in that position, because you need to be able to turn off your conscience for, in that sense, not that you're doing the wrong thing in the immediate sense, in the long-term sense, but in the moment to do a very hard thing that will cause less loss of life in the long term. But you're trying to make him feel all these deaths unnecessarily. He wasn't out of line in the first place. The whole film falls apart because the premise of the film does not make any sense. That lesson does not need to be taught. And then there's a moment at the end where he's talking to the AI and he's unnecessarily waiting while he might get killed. And he says, one thing you forgot about is that we can learn, talking about humans can learn. This is bad. Okay, I don't understand why nobody caught this. It's bad writing. It's too heavy-handed of a premise. There's nothing that this film does for me that I have not seen before, and it does not do this in a nuanced way. Now, that being said, if you want to watch an action movie, it's not terrible. I don't want to poo-poo the whole film. It's worth a watch. I give it a 7 out of 10, given what we're seeing in the film. It's worth watching and seeing how they operate, but the way that they try to contrive so many different aspects of this, the villain doesn't even have a real backstory. He just wants to rule the world like any other villain. And you know, some films, or most films, I think, when they have an antagonist, the film can be judged by the antagonist. When you talk about the Marvel versus DC stuff, Marvel's done a fantastic job of not having necessarily great antagonists, but the internal conflict and looking at the humanity of the heroes, which I think is a great thing, but most films can't do that. DC, the Joker as a villain is the reason why, to me, Batman is such a fantastic hero, because you have that counterpart there. Here, generic bad guy who wants to rule the world. Literally Euron Greyjoy playing the exact same person in modern times that he plays in Game of Thrones. So why did you not just invest in this further, or at least let me be more invested in this conflict? I could not get into the film fully because of the fact that it just had an unrealistic premise and a heavy-handed message that nobody really needed to learn. So that being said, I give it a 7 out of 10. Please check out Outside the Wire on Netflix and let me know what you think. Comment below if you disagree with me or if you agree. Like and subscribe for Meals on Reels, and I'll see y'all next time.